All right. Well, I would just like to welcome everybody to our ECHO network for November. So, if you all remember, ECHO stands for Early Childhood Hoosiers Outdoors, and we are a network designed to support educational practitioners wanting to get their students outside. And that looks like a lot of different things, from those of us here at Mary Lee, Megan running her in-home daycare. It looks like we have Jana from Preschool on the Prairie. And we have our speaker, Gretchen. So we're really excited to have such a wealth of knowledge here and really good opportunity for us for resource sharing. So I did put a prompt over in the chat feature, so asking folks to list their name and their organization. And then our fun question for this month is, what is your one sign that winter is coming? So I know for mine, it's the turkey vultures are still around. I saw I don't know, maybe like 50 of them yesterday when I was out hiking at Chain of Lake. So I was like, well, I guess winter's not quite here yet because they're still hanging around. They haven't started their great migration. Gretchen mentioned that her yard is frosty in the morning. Janice said bare branches on the trees. And Foy said, I know winter is coming because every kind of shoe, jacket, and hat is in the mudroom. So those were all ones to give us a little chuckle. And just a reminder that, yeah, even though it's almost 60 degrees here today, winter is coming. So I am really excited this month to introduce our speaker. We are having Gretchen back. Gretchen, remind me, but you were here is it almost 2 years ago now?
It was probably a year and a half ago. Yeah.
Year and a half ago.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so we were so excited to have Gretchen join us, and she gave us a great presentation. We could probably send out the link to that one as well. I know we recorded that one for folks that would be interested in learning more about integrating therapy, and we're here to learn a little bit more from her today. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Gretchen to get us started.
Great. Get my presentation up here. Oops. Okay. Today I'm going to be talking about forest schools for students with special needs, and what needs to be done to become an inclusive program. This is a subject that is near and dear to my heart. I am an occupational therapist, and have been working with children with special needs for the past 13 years now, across various settings. And while I knew we couldn't jump into this right away when we started our forest school, it's something that we are working very hard to serve more students with special needs. Um, just so you know where I came from, my professional training, I graduated from Purdue in 20 oh 2003, with a degree in organizational leadership and supervision. I tell people all the time that I had zero intent in using this degree. I was young and really had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. And my sister said, you should do this. And I said, okay. So I did. And it's funny how the world works because I've come around and I am now leading an organization. So turned out to be a pretty useful degree for me in the long term. Um, but shortly after I started working, I was working in human resources after graduating from Purdue and really found that I am just not a person that can sit at a desk all day long. So I started getting my prerequisites, and went back and got my master's of occupational therapy from Midwestern University in Downers Grove, Illinois. Um, and I worked in a clinic for 3 years, which I loved the job, hated the hours. After my son was born, I never went back from maternity leave and started working in schools because I loved the hours in the schools. But I really didn't like the job very much. Well, we worked with some of the greatest people I know. The teachers and the administrators are absolutely wonderful people, and working so hard to meet our students' needs. But I've really found that, especially kids with sensory difficulties, which was a lot of my caseload, those kids have a very hard time functioning within the walls of a traditional classroom. So, had a lot of kids with ADHD, a lot of kids on the autism spectrum, and with sensory processing disorder. So tried to use all of the sensory supports that we have within traditional classrooms, and I just really wasn't seeing the results that I wanted for those kiddos. So when I learned about forest schools in 2021, I decided, and I found out that Lafayette didn't have one at the time. So I decided this was my new mission in life and founded Forest Academy in 2022. We started off with 15 kids and one class in August of 22. And this year we have 7 classes and currently 106 kids enrolled. So we've grown very, very quickly. But we're really, as I said, working hard to try to, we just updated our mission statement and such, and we're really, really working hard on trying to become more of an inclusive program. I really just have a passion for connecting with and helping those kids that need some extra assistance to be able to function within a group setting. So I'm asked very, very frequently why I think there is so much more of a prevalence of children with special needs in today's world than there was, 40 years ago or more, or even 20 years ago, really. Um, and my theories that are backed by a lot of research that I've done. Number one is the lack of movement, and this starts in infancy. We put our kids in baby containers, which are car seats, bouncy seats, swings, and all of those things that keep them in one place. And they really miss out on the opportunity to explore their environment, which is hugely important from a very, very young age. I always recommend that people just put their kids on the floor. You have to watch them a lot more, but they need to be able to learn to move their bodies and to explore their environment that way. And unfortunately, that lack of movement persists through childhood. So many kids, I've read, I'm not sure of the accuracy of this, and you all may have seen this too, but the average child spends less than 10 minutes a day outside and more than 6 hours a day on a screen, which is terrifying. But truly, a lot of the kids that I know, that seems pretty accurate to me, sadly. So screens are a really big factor as well in the increase of special education referrals, especially again in the very young years. A child's brain is not programmed to process that extreme amount of sensory information that comes at them through a phone or a TV. The pictures on the screen just move way too fast. The noises move way too fast, and we can't. The kids just can't process that. But then it starts to program their brain to expect that all the time. And so when they don't have that extreme amount of stimulation, they just don't know how to function. So the warnings that we hear all the time are very, very true, that screens are just really not good for little people. With those two things, the lack of free play and exploration, and there's just so much cognitive benefit from just being able to explore your world, playing with loose parts, getting outside, getting dirty, all of those good things that we have in forest school. So, and then another big problem is the developmentally inappropriate demands in traditional schools. When I was in kindergarten, and I'm sure it's the same with many of you, that we went half day and we played. We never really did the academic work that they do now. When I was working in kindergarten classrooms, by the end of the year, they had the kids writing in full paragraphs. And I just never really understood why, nor do any of the teachers that I worked with understand why. Everyone agrees that this is not appropriate for the kids, but it's the standards that they have to work within. So it's a really frustrating situation. Um, and when we're pushing the kids to do things that they're not developmentally ready for, of course we're going to have more need for special education because they can't keep up with it. Um, so that system is just something that really needs to change, I am working on it, and I know all of you are working on it as well. Another thing that I really think about a lot is the idea of asynchronous learning. And in schools, they only focus on academic, but there are so many other kinds of learning that are very important: social learning, emotional learning, executive functioning skills, all of those things that they really can't address within the traditional classroom very well. And some kids are great socially, but they really struggle academically, or it could be the other way around. And it's unfortunately within the traditional school system, the only thing that they really measure is the academic learning. So there's so many other things to look at. And again, that is a benefit of forest school, is we can address a lot more of those things within our programs that they're not able to. I added some of my favorite memes into my presentation today. I find memes to be very inspiring to me. This is one that I love. When a flower doesn't bloom, you fix the environment in which it grows, not the flower. And that was a really big inspiration for me to get started with Forest Academy. And I have surely seen this, that a lot of our kids, when you put them outside, they just do so much better within a group. Than when they're sitting at a table inside all day long. Um, so many benefits of having an inclusive program, and really a lot of these benefits are similar to the benefits of forest schools. Um, Mental health, physical health, improved sensory processing, improved executive functioning. I'm going to go through each one of these individually, so I'm not going to talk about all of them individually on this slide. But really looking specifically at the inclusive program, the modeling of typically developing peers is huge for kids that have any sort of developmental delay. And then improved empathy for all. There's a lot of benefits for typically developing peers to be exposed to children that have special needs. It really helps them just to understand that everyone else's needs are different than theirs, and that everybody learns differently, and that's okay. So grateful to be able to provide this for all of our kiddos. Looking at mental health specifically, a lot of times kids with special needs are pulled from the classroom and taken into a separate classroom. And when we are able to integrate them into our program, it really gives them a sense of belonging, and they're able to interact with all of their peers and still have a lot of fun. And it's just a really wonderful thing to see. We all know that nature is very calming. So it's great for our mental health altogether, both kids and adults. I know we all feel it as adults too. Perseverance is one thing that's probably the thing that I've gotten the best feedback from all of our parents through, is just that our kids are so much more likely to be able to work through a challenging activity with a positive attitude, and not give up. And unfortunately, kids with special needs can learn what's called learned helplessness. When we help them too much, they just become very reliant on the help. So we're really big on only helping the kids if they're not able to do something themselves, and at least giving them the chance to try before we step in and help. So and working through those activities really helps to build their self-confidence as well, which is a wonderful thing. Um, Physical health, again, is very similar to just the benefits of forest schools altogether. The fresh air, the exposure to dirt, those things help to improve our immune systems. A lot of our kiddos with special needs, their immune systems can be compromised. And so being outside where it's not recycled air is so much better for them. It's so much less exposure to the germs than it is inside. So, and dirt, we all know has good microbiomes within the dirt that really do help to improve our immune system. So movement is a huge part of what we do in forest school. You can see the kids climbing all over the down logs there, which is they just absolutely love. And it's so good for their muscles, so good for their overall health. Um, One of the things that I touched on in my presentation last time, and I realized I didn't put it in the PowerPoint clearly, that there are a couple of sensory systems that we really address in forest schools that um, are hugely beneficial for overall regulation, and they help with our physical health as well. And those are body awareness and movement. Movement, those are both sensory systems. Called the proprioceptive system is body awareness, and the vestibular sense system is movement. And both of those things really help us to regulate our bodies and keep us healthy. So, which is wonderful. Sensory integration is a big area, especially for my neurodivergent kids. So the kids on the autism spectrum with ADHD, sensory processing disorder are the biggest diagnoses that I see. And forest schools really just are the perfect environment to help with sensory integration, because it requires that we are in an alert state, because we have to be paying attention when the terrain is always different. But at the same time, it's the environment is so calming. So that is the ideal state for sensory integration, for learning, and for healing as well. So it's really great to be able to offer this to those kids that struggle in this area. So also within nature, it is a whole body sensory experience. So there's always things to touch, um, different things to see, the all sorts of different sounds. There are smells out there sometimes too, and through the movement and heavy work that we do, we also address that body awareness and in the vestibular sense, all at the same time. And that is the best way to help to heal the sensory systems when they're not functioning correctly. So, and again, heavy work. There's just so much of it within forest schools, and it really is the thing that I use the most as an occupational therapist. It is the most regulating of all of our sensory systems. So I bring up frequently that so many people like to work out in the morning and say that they're more focused and just feel better throughout the day if they do some sort of a workout in the morning, especially weights. And so that heavy work really lasts all the way throughout our lifetime, that it really can just help us to be more focused and more regulated throughout the day. So again, a wonderful thing to be able to offer our students. You can see there them walking up a really, really steep hill at Forest Academy. So it's a really hard thing to do, but they love it, and they will do it over and over and over again because their bodies really are seeking that out to help to regulate. Executive functioning skills are a really big focus for us as well. The things that we see the most impact on our kids are in their flexibility, because we never know what we're going to get when we go out in nature. Things can be completely different one day from another. And we have to just adapt and work with what we've got and learn to have fun, regardless of what the environment looks like. So within reason, of course, we're not going to take them into an environment that's not safe, but there might be a tree down one day that wasn't there the day before. And so they just learn new ways to have fun in that space. And attention is also hugely impacted in what we do. Again, when we're walking through nature, we have to be aware of what's going on around us in order to keep ourselves safe. So attention is really something that we see a lot of improvement with our kiddos. Also, just throughout the year, thinking about like our organized activity times at the beginning of the year versus the end of the year, it just looks so much different because the kids have so much better attention skills at that point in time after being out in nature throughout the year. Self-control is another area that we see a lot of improvement. While people child-proof environments with the best of intentions, we find that when it is not child-proofed, that the children learn to test their limits and pull themselves back when they need to, and that is how we develop self-control. When we child-proof everything, we take away their ability to develop that skill, and so then when they're given a little bit of freedom, they just go crazy. But if we give them small doses of riskier play, it helps them to develop that skill. So, and again, that's something that is a big challenge for our neurodivergent kids. Perseverance, as I said earlier, is the other one that we really see a lot of great improvement. And I tell this story often, and I can't remember if I told it the last time that it presented, but it was very impactful on me. So I'm going to share it again. In our first year, there was this little girl, tiny little 4-year-old, but she came with this giant bag, and we were walking up that really steep hill that was in the last picture. And she's like, Miss Gretchen, will you carry my bag for me? And I was just like, no, I won't. I really want to, but I'm not going to because you need to learn to do it yourself. And she did. And she was so proud of herself by the end of the time getting up that hill. And she's like, that was hard, but I did it. I said, I know. It was a really cool experience. So it was fun to see that come to life. And then another benefit that we have is just the interaction between typically developing students and students with special needs. Those students can be really great models in routines and expected behaviors. They will correct the kiddos with special needs sometimes, and typically in a very nice way, which is good. But they will kind of just guide them along when we need to be transitioning between activities or whatever it may be. And that is just a really cool opportunity for them to be leaders in that situation. Motivation to challenge themselves and engage in play. There's no better motivator for a child than another child. So those kids that might avoid challenging activities, which unfortunately I see that a lot in the kids that I work with. When they see their peers doing those things, they really want to be a part of it. So it's fun to see that motivator come through and help them out. And as I said earlier, there's just huge benefit for all of us to be exposed to people with different abilities and learn to enjoy time with people who are different from us. There's no time other than school, traditional schools, that people are only with their same age peers all day long, every day. And we need to learn to interact more with people who have different needs and different abilities than we do, because that's the real world. So being able to see those kids learn how to have fun together, it's pretty cool. It's a lot of fun. So of course, there are lots of challenges that come along with having an inclusive program as well. But I strongly believe that the benefits far outweigh the challenges. So we do it anyways, but still want to address all of these things with you guys, so that if you are wanting to be more inclusive within your program, you kind of know what to expect and what to prepare for. And again, I've got individual slides for each one of these, but they're mobility, safety and body awareness, self-regulation, and then following rules and instructions. Mobility is, of course, a pretty significant challenge. The little girl in that last picture there, she has cerebral palsy and really has a hard time picking up her feet to get over obstacles in the environment. So she is one that needs a bit extra help. She sometimes uses ambulation supports like walking sticks, But she also often, typically almost always has a aid with her as well to help her. We know that she does fall somewhat frequently, and we've worked with her parents on this and just say that we are going to help her fall gracefully, and just help her to learn from it every time that she does it. So we don't want to avoid letting her be out there just because of the risk that comes along with her falling, as long as we're aware of it, and we prepare for it. Typically keep her as much as we can on grassy areas, or areas where there aren't significant obstacles that she could bump her head on or anything. And thus far, it's worked very, very well. So we're grateful to have her with us. We have actually also had a child who was in a wheelchair. I didn't have any pictures of him to share, but I was super excited to be able to include him in our program. We are very lucky that we operate out of a Girl Scout camp, so there are very well-groomed areas all around the camp, and so he's able to be in those areas with us, and we just schedule our day around the days that he's going to be with us. We make sure that we're going to be in those areas that he can navigate. And it works very well. He's very, very happy to be out there and with his peers, because there's so much that he's not able to be included in because of his mobility. So that is a lot of fun to be able to do. And the other thing that we do with him is we have an alternative drop-off location, because most of our kids have to walk up and down that giant hill every day. It's not safe. It's much safer pushing him up the hill, even though it's harder, than it is getting him down the hill, because if we lost control with him going down, he could be hurt pretty bad, and we certainly don't want that. So very grateful that the Girl Scouts have allowed his mom to drive down the hill, and they get in and out of the car down there. So an alternative drop-off location might be necessary for a child in a wheelchair in that kind of situation, but it is something that can be done and should be done if it's at all possible. Safety and body awareness is a really big one. As I was saying earlier, that kids with who are neurodivergent have difficulties understanding their body awareness and how to move their body in space. So they might overshoot or undershoot some of their movements. So doing things like climbing trees can be even more risky for a child that doesn't have good body awareness. So we just have to stay very, very close and coach them through certain situations in order to make sure that they're staying safe. Our rule at Forest Academy is that children can only climb trees as high as an adult can reach them, so that we can step in and help them if needed. So we talked about, though, that child-proofing actually is inhibiting our children's ability to develop safety and body awareness. So we try to do that as little as possible and help them to assess the risk on their own rather than us doing it for them. And then again, heavy work is in here a lot, but it's a very important part of what we do. So so that really does help them to develop that skill of body awareness. And then peer monitoring, we certainly do not rely on this by any means. We have a good enough ratio that adults are constantly monitoring what our kids do, but there are times that peers will say, "Hey, that's not safe," and to kind of pull a child back. So it's nice when they're watching out for each other too. Self-regulation is another issue that can come into play with a child that is just feeling very dysregulated because their sensory integration is off. So we tend to see a lot of more extreme feelings with some of our neurodivergent kids. And really, we just want to give them the space to feel those feelings. We recently had an occupational therapy student who completed her capstone project with us, and she trained us all on trauma-informed care. which we came to find trauma-informed care is really valuable for all students, even if they didn't ever experience any sort of trauma. It's really, again, just letting them have the space to feel their feelings, validating their feelings, and doing what we need to keep them safe as they're feeling those feelings. So um, we're very grateful for that training that we had. But the natural environment really does help to improve our overall mood. And as we discussed, perseverance and self-confidence, which also comes into play with self-regulation. So if you're feeling better about yourself, you're typically better able to keep yourself in a regulated state. I saw something recently that I like to clarify for people that it said that being regulated doesn't necessarily mean being calm. It means being able to match your energy level to the activity. So at a forest school, kids running around and screaming are self-regulated kids because that's what they should be doing and it's appropriate for the setting. But then when we come together for our story time, when they're able to calm themselves. And then we go back to free play time and they get right back to that elevated state. So that is something that I just like to point out to people because I think that it is a common misconception that being regulated means being calm. So not always. I believe I have, yes, I threw in another meme here. And this is when I need this reminder sometimes. And I think we all do that the kids who need the most love will ask for it in the most unloving ways. We say very frequently that behavior is always communication, that these kids are not trying to give us a hard time, they're having a hard time. So we need to really be with them, let them feel their feelings, and help them to come back to a state where they could be kind and loving to the others around them. So not always an easy thing to do, though. Um, And we talked about the benefits of having peers around and following routines and instructions, but this can be a challenge for some of our kids with developmental delays and neurodivergent kids as well. Again, peer modeling is very valuable here. We use visual cues for some of our kids. We'll have like a checklist of the day of what we're going through every day, and they can check it off throughout the session, and that can be very helpful for kids just to know what's coming next. We do have, as I discussed, some individual or small group support people that help some of our kiddos too. And I'll talk more about that in a little bit because the question that always comes up in it is how do we pay for that? So because unfortunately through all of this, we have to worry about keeping our business profitable as well, and at least to the point that we can pay our staff. So that is a big factor when it comes into adding in extra supports. But we'll talk about that in a little bit. So some of the other supports that we have in place at Forest Academy, we have staff training every month in our staff meetings. We go over different topics. As I discussed, we did trauma-informed care. We did that last year and then actually revisited it again this year because we have new staff, some new staff, and we felt like having the reminder for our staff that we had last year was still very valuable. So something that we really focus on a lot. We've also done training on sensory processing. We've done training just on our general safety protocols. Next month, we're going to be focusing specifically on children on the autism spectrum. But really throughout the year, whatever staff feel like they need a little bit help with, we find some training to bring into our staff meeting every month. We have, and most forest schools have smaller class sizes and a better child to staff ratio. We are at a 6-to-1 ratio for children to staff, which works very well for most of our students. But and it is, we're able to provide a little bit more attention to each student with that smaller ratio to help them through whatever challenges they may be having. But of course, there are some kids that need more support. So we have some of those individual or small group support people. Last year, we had a girl who was hired by us. That brought some challenges. It's something that I hope to add more of, but like the days that the child that needed her was absent, that was really hard because we had to pay her even though the child wasn't there. Or we had some other absences that it just was kind of a harder thing to manage with as small as Forest Academy is at this point in time. But again, I hope to be able to offer more of that in long term. We do have some parents who will attend with their children. We do have them go through background checks like we do anyone else who has any interaction with our kids. But there are a few that really want their kids to be with us, but they know that they can't handle the group environment without some extra support, so they're willing to come along. We do still charge those kids tuition just like we do anybody else, but we allow their parents to be there, always in the hopes that they can pull back from doing that, that it's not going to be a full year of parents attending, but kind of just to help us to get some strategies in place for the child so that they can function within our classes. This year, we also have some support through a respite care service. Kids that are on the Medicaid waiver, and I believe there might be other funding sources for that as well. But there are lots of respite care programs around Lafayette that provide babysitting or transportation to extracurricular activities or support through extracurricular activities. So that one child that we had hired someone to be with last year, she's actually getting her support through this respite care service, and it is covered through her insurance, and she's still able to be with us without the stressors that we had of having our own staff with her. So that is another really good option to have, so we can still have these kiddos with us. We are working hard. I am working hard on developing our therapy program at Forest Academy right now. I have 4 private clients that I'm working with. All are private pay currently. And our hope in the long term is that these kids will come to our forest school program, be there for the full 3 hours, and I will pull them, or not even pull them, I'm sorry. I will work with them individually within the group to help work on their specific goals in the group setting, and be able to then bill therapy services for that hour that I'm with them. And then we'll have another support person that's with them for the other 2 hours that they're there within our program. So that is how I see that functioning in the long term, but it is not quite there yet. And when we scheduled this, I'd hoped that we would be there, but working with Medicaid is not an easy thing. So we'll get there. Other supports that we have are just having areas where the kids can go kind of away from the group, still within our visual line of sight, but away from the group when they need to calm themselves down. I mean, we don't ever call that a timeout. We just say, hey, let's go for a little walk and just take some time to calm down. And we try not to ever treat that as a punishment, but just more of a support for the kids. We talked about ADA accessibility, and again, we're very lucky to have more of that because we operate out of the Girl Scout camp. There are ramps and other, all of the doorways to our indoor spaces are the correct size, and all of that. Parking is all accessible as well, and I'm grateful that they have that set up so that we can operate within their space. There are also some really cool wheelchairs that are being developed now for people with disabilities to be able to get out in more uneven terrain. So that is something that is certainly in my mind. Someday, maybe we'll apply for a grant to be able to have that within our program someday. But and I talked earlier that the kids that have more mobility challenges but aren't wheelchair bound, sometimes just having walking sticks to keep them balanced can be very helpful too. So those are all things that we have used within our program and plan to use more of in the future. Um, Funding again is always one of the biggest questions because we have to be able to pay people to do these things. So we are very grateful to be a part of the Indiana Education Scholarship Account Program. So families who children would have an IEP if they were attending traditional schools. Their families can gain access to all of the funds that would go to their public school and use that to direct their child's education. So we have families that pay for our tuition out of the Indiana ESA, as well as our therapy services. They can pay for those as well, but it does tutoring, it does all sorts of different programs to help kids out as well. It's kids that don't function as well within public schools. So um, that has been a great funding source for us, and happy to have that for our families. As I discussed, we are working on becoming a Medicaid provider, and we actually are a provider for traditional Medicaid. But something that I found out through this process is that traditional Medicaid doesn't cover the majority of kids that are on Medicaid. There are managed care entities, which are four other different programs that kids can be enrolled within. And that is their insurance company, and you have to be credentialed for all of those separately. So that is what I'm working on right now. Um, and I really know I know that once we are able to accept Medicaid, our therapy program is going to grow immensely because the wait lists here in Lafayette are 6 months to a year for all of our pediatric therapy services. So as soon as I have other funding options for those families to be able to pay for their services, I know that we'll get quite a few. So I have worked also on the idea of accepting private insurance, and I started the process with that with a few different payers, but I have had multiple people now tell me that that is a bad idea. So I'm stepping back from that. Unfortunately, private insurance companies like Blue Cross Blue Shield and Cigna, they determine how much you are paid. You don't get to say, this is my charge, this is what you have to pay me. They say, no, well, they say, we charge $100 an hour for a therapy session. They might pay you 40. And I still have not quite figured out how many therapy clinics function that way. But I've had many, many people tell me that being a smaller operation, it's not a good thing, not a good idea for us to get into that. So for now, outside of Medicaid, we are going to be offering services on a private pay basis and giving the parents the option to submit the claims themselves. If we do that, then parents have to check their out-of-network benefits on their own initially, and then as long as our services would be covered um, within their insurance benefits, then we provide what's called a super bill, which is a detailed receipt of what services we have offered for or we have provided for that month, and they can submit that for reimbursement. So that is our plan on building our therapy program. It is still a work in progress. So I believe, yep, that is what I've got for today. So does anybody have any questions on how this functions?
Thank you so much, Gretchen. I think Megan has a question that she typed in, so I'm gonna
Mhm.
read that to you. She's asking, are those managed care entities state specific, or because it's
Yes,
Medicaid, it's federal, or is it the Indiana specific Medicaid
they
entity?
are Indiana specific. So it is called, hang on, does it even say this? No, I'm blanking right now. I can't remember what MHS stands for, but they do, they oversee all of the managed care entities. So like I said, traditional Medicaid is the,
The umbrella.
yes, and you have to be a provider for traditional Medicaid before you can apply to be a provider for those managed care entities.
Okay.
Um, so yeah,
Yeah.
it's been quite a learning process and a bit of a frustrating process because
Yeah.
I surely thought we were going to be operating much more. than we are right now. But
Yeah,
still, what else can you do but keep working at it?
absolutely. All right, we can open it up now. Um, if anybody would like to come off of mute and ask questions, you're welcome to, or you're welcome to keep asking those in the chat feature. It looks like Jana is really excited to hear about your school. She's interested in maybe coming for a site visit, so asking if that would be possible.
Yeah, I'd love that.
Okay.
I hired an operations director this year, so I am not, I don't have to be, um, there in case of emergency all the time. I've got somebody else to do that. So,
Yeah.
so we can be out, walking around and checking things out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Gretchen, I know I have a little bit more background about your school than maybe others do, just because I've seen
Yeah.
your previous presentation, but could you just give us a little bit of an overview about what does your structure look like? I know you mentioned it's
Sure.
about 3 hours
Yeah.
for a time block, some of those
Um,
things.
so because we're not a licensed facility, we operate just 3 hours a day. We work mostly with homeschooling families and preschoolers. Our main classes are a multi-age class with kids ages 3 to 11. Um, we have 2 day a week classes on Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursdays in the morning, and then the rest of our classes are all 1 day a week classes. But we do allow families to be there for multiple classes as long as they're not within the same day, because that would put them over that 4 hour limit of when you need to become licensed. So I did just read something though that makes me question whether or not um, we have to work within that parameter. So if anybody else has any more information to share with me on that, on how you can have kids there all day long, um, because we're never going to meet building codes. So that is a frustrating thing. They did tell us that there was an option of operating and calling our time in the forest a field trip every day. But there were still a few things that we didn't meet there with the Girl Scout camp. So side comment there. This year, we started a preteen and teen class, which has been so much fun. I actually told them a couple of weeks ago, I never thought that I liked teenagers until I met these kids. And maybe it's just taking them outside makes them so much cooler. I don't know. But they're a lot of fun. And we're focusing more on wilderness survival skills with them. We have done we started with nature journaling and first aid, and then we did whittling, and we've done fire building. We're going to be doing orienteering and animal tracking and foraging and all sorts of different stuff. And we do a different focus each month. So that's been a ton of fun. And I am the head teacher of that class still. I wanted to do that as we were getting it started, and then I'll probably hand it off to somebody else next year so that I can focus more on our therapy program. But yeah, that's where we're at right now. I will say, like I told you guys, that I want our therapy program to be happening within the parameters of our forest school and happening at the same time. One of the biggest challenges that I had when I was working in a clinic was that, we brought kids into this sterile environment and this like 10 by 10 room, and it was just me and them. And I'm like, well, if they can come in here and tolerate the sensory input in this nice quiet room with no other stimulation happening, well, great. But then what does that do if they can't carry that out into the real world? So doing therapy within a group of other kids is just going to be really great to help overcome that issue. So and while I'm still on this funding page, I don't think that I said this out loud earlier in my presentation, but I'm doing this in the my biggest motivator is because this is what I love to do. I love working with kids that need extra help and getting into their worlds and helping them to feel safe. There's truly nothing better in the world, in my opinion. But it will help Forest Academy from a financial standpoint too, because you charge a lot more for therapy services than you do for school tuition. So again, something that we have to think of as business owners and nonprofit leadership is our bottom line and our financials. So I'm looking forward to having a bit more income for our school as well as being able to do what I love doing again. So yeah.
All right, we'll leave it open if anybody has any other questions. I know one thing I'm wondering is, have you dealt with many like English language learning students or students that are, oh, you're muted or something there, Gretchen, or I'm not hearing you.
It's not showing me that it's for me. Is it still?
Oh, there you go.
Okay. Um, I said it's kind of surprising with Purdue here.
That's what I was
We
wondering.
really
Yeah,
have
with
it
like,
because
faculty coming in or that sort
yeah,
of thing.
no, we really haven't. More than anything, I think our biggest challenge is, forest schools are great for children with ADHD, but putting a whole bunch of children with ADHD together can be a bit much sometimes. But we learn and we learn to work with them and help them to meet their needs while they're out there so that they can better participate in our program safely. So
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Gretchen. And I know Jana was interested in connecting with you. So, Jana, just know that in our follow-up email that'll go out tomorrow, we'll have her contact information and links to the website that you can contact Gretchen through her website that way. So,
I should say too, something else I wanted to throw in here is that there is a network of nature-based therapy providers. So if anyone is interested in looking to see if there's anyone around you to help provide these kind of services for your students, I'd be happy to provide that link for you so that you could search for people to come help support your kids.
that would be great. Thank you so much. As we wrap up, I just want to make a few announcements and then also just kind of leave the floor open. So if anybody knows of any other opportunities, we can share those out. I know kind of on the Mary Lee side of things, our presenter that we'll have in January, we have two principals that are going to be joining us from Monroe County Community School Corporation. So they're down there around Bloomington and they are doing some really fantastic things down there with their school. So we're going to be hearing from two of the principals down there. And we also are going to be holding another training this February here at Mary Lee in collaboration with FISTE, so Forest School Teacher Institute. That'll be coming in February, and I can send out some more information about that. But if that is something you are interested in, you can check that out. Are there any other conferences or any other fun things that you all want to bring forth? All right. Just a reminder that we also still have our Google group. So if you have questions about something maybe that Gretchen had mentioned or anything in general, please feel free to use that Google group as a way to network, get some feedback, that sort of thing as well. So with that, just thank you so much, Gretchen. It was so great to hear from you again, and you have made some great strides in the past year and a half. So I just want to say, yeah, from my side of things, like keep up the great work that you're doing. It's so exciting to be able to see all the students' lives that you're touching. So really excited to continue to see how you're doing, and hopefully you can continue to join us in this network. So thank you all so much for joining. I don't know if you have the sunshine like we do here at Mary Lee, but definitely get out and enjoy this nice weather. So we will see you with Echo back in January. Otherwise, I hope you all have a wonderful holiday season and we will see you soon.